Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Daniel-Mabry Project. This episode is with my new friend Conrad Cable. Conrad is living in the Garden District of Monroe, and he's a farmer. He helps run, along with his brother and father, Current Farms. Current Farms is a multi-location farm, honestly. It's in Marion, it's in Downsville, it's in the Garden District of Monroe. All three of those places function differently, and we talk a little bit about that and how all three of those locations became, I guess. We talk a lot about permaculture and what permaculture is and what makes up permaculture, and I was just really fascinated by that, and Conrad is a wealth of information on that, so I was really locked in on what he was having to say and learned a lot throughout the process. We talk a lot about, like I said, permaculture and social issues, and we really go all over the place, and I just had a lot of fun doing this podcast. Like I said, I learned stuff during the podcast, learned stuff after the podcast. Conrad and Emmy were kind enough to let me hang out for a little bit longer, and then they cooked me brunch, and me and Conrad continued to talk, so we learned a lot, and like I say, very appreciative of their friendship and hope that I can hang out with them in the future. Follow Current Farms and Conrad on Facebook and Instagram. I'll leave the handles here and the information below. If you want to support me, support this podcast, I did recently quit my job and sell my home and pursuing the podcast and videography, photography for full time. So if you want to support this podcast, the easiest way to do so is to subscribe. Subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on whatever podcast app you're listening to right now. Share it, leave a comment, and just continue to push this podcast and get it out to new people and continue to explore new avenues. That's the goal. You can follow me on Instagram at Dan.Mabry. The Dan-Mabry Project is on Facebook, and it's on Instagram under Dose of DMP. So I'm going to be pumping out content from all of those places. I would love your support along the way. If you want to support me financially, if you find financial, backing in this podcast, then I do have a Patreon page. My Venmo is always open, and more than willing to work for it as well. So if you have a videography opportunity or podcasting opportunity, please reach out. I am in Dallas, Texas at the moment. I've started my travels a little bit, and I'm sure I will be vlogging a little bit more of that here in the future. All that being said, I hope that everyone had a wonderful Christmas and a happy new year, and I'm looking forward to 2020, looking forward to getting moving and exploring the world. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for all your support, and we're not stopping now. So peace. Conrad Cable, welcome to the program. I found Conrad through the Instagram and some other recommendations from some friends and whatnot, and me and Amelia Haynes were and Nathan were at Enoch's maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and Amelia was like, "There's Conrad, you need to go talk to him." So I slipped him a sticker and was like, "Hey man, love to have you on the podcast if you're interested." And I guess I'd already started following you at that point and seeing your compost adventures, and it was like, what on the earth is this dude doing? He's creating gigantic piles of leaves and stuff in his backyard. That's pretty interesting. So
hoarding carbon, man.
Yeah. So I guess tell us a little bit more about yourself, where you come from, maybe when the farm started, that kind of deal?
Sure. So I'm originally from Marion, Louisiana, and that's in Union Parish. But I went to Linville High School until the parish consolidated all their schools, and then my parents made the sacrifice and choice to send us to Ouachita Christian. And so that's where I graduated high school from. So I started going there in 8th grade. And so I've always kind of felt, I'm from Marion, but really my home has always kind of been Monroe.
Yeah.
I graduated from ULM. We live in the Garden District.
Right.
And so, Monroe is for sure home. I've been growing food since I was 3 years old.
Okay.
3 years old, since I was in 3rd grade.
Okay.
Some of my earliest memories were my father asking the neighbors come down to help us dig sweet potatoes because there were so many. But no, it was a way for me to make money, and for us to, kind of supplement what we ate as a family. And so my mother worked at CenturyLink. She retired after 35 years. And in their little break room, she would take these bags of vegetables that I would prepare every morning. So I'd wake up during the summer and I'd go out and I'd pick all these vegetables and I'd bring them back, and my mom would take them in this big cardboard box to work, and then she'd bring home an envelope of 30, $60.
Yeah.
And so it was a way. I remember being in 4th grade and having $1,000 in my bank account. And so
that's some good motivation to continue to pick vegetables.
Yeah. And so, 3rd grade all the way up until I was a freshman in high school. And whenever I started playing football and sports during the summer,
yeah,
you go and and you work out real hard at 7 a.m. And then I just didn't feel like doing a garden anymore after that. I kind of got lazy.
Yeah.
But no, I would. It was a big venture. We would grow thousands of pounds of potatoes and dozens of hundreds. It seemed like hundreds of bushels of purple hull peas. And one year I made close to $3,000 in a summer, and that was a lot of hard work. But it was something that my family did together.
Right.
It was something that made me feel good because you got to, invest all of this time and then, reap the rewards later. And it was a great way to, get me involved in the community. So I won this 4-H. I was in 4-H from 4th through 12th grade. That was a big part of, not necessarily agricultural work, but more of like the leadership roles. And I was always interested. I've always been interested in horticulture.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you were born into it to some degree. But,
yeah.
But I mean, obviously the draw of money will kind of incite you to learn more and that type of deal.
For sure, man. And it wasn't just the money. Like, I was able to do things that I love to do. So yeah. I was really into baseball. We bought a pitching machine one year. And that was a big investment. Like, I was able to make investments back into the farm. So we bought, a tiller, we bought a pea sheller, and things that enabled me to make more money.
Yeah.
And then through 4-H, I got into shooting sports, and I was able to save up money and buy a really nice shotgun. So it felt good to kind of have a little bit of independence.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it feels good to pay for your own things, especially at a young age like that.
Yeah. And so in college, I got back into it because, I started living a healthier lifestyle. And so I was going to, and this isn't a knock on health food stores, but being like a working class person, I didn't really have the money to buy the organic vegetables like I wanted to. And it was just really hitting my bank account hard. And then I started going to the farmers markets because it was a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
And at the same time I was going to the farmers markets, one of my yoga teachers was like, hey, have you ever heard about permaculture? I was like, whenever I worked in magazines at Books A Million, I had seen the magazines, but I didn't really have like an understanding of what it was. And so the first thing that she told me about was the Hyuga Culture, what we just saw in the backyard.
Okay,
So that was
alright.
kind of
Yeah.
like my introduction. And the Hyuga Culture is just buried wood with soil on top of it, and you plant inside of the earth, and then the wood breaks down over time. It holds moisture, creates a small ecosystem, and you grow amazing vegetables.
Yeah, that's something I failed to mention before we started this. Feel free to over elaborate as much as you want.
Sure, man.
Yeah, just because I don't know a lot about what you do, and I'm assuming that our audience doesn't either. So
Yeah, and I'll try to be thorough on what permaculture is, but
yeah, I guess that's a good place to start. Can you define permaculture?
Oh yeah, I can. So so permaculture is the replication of natural systems using human creativity. So it's all about designing each landscape so that you utilize the resources that are coming into the landscape in the most efficient and creative ways possible.
Okay.
So the two resources that enter every landscape are sunlight and water. And utilizing those resources to your advantage is where permaculture design begins. And I'm really excited. I've only read a bunch of books and watched many hours of YouTube videos. If anyone is interested about permaculture, you can YouTube the Permaculture Design Certificate course, or Permaculture Design course, and there is 72 hours worth of YouTube videos taught by the two founders of permaculture and the current leader. So it's Bill Mollison and Jeff Lawton. And they're the two guys that really have, taken the movement into this, this century. And they're Bill Mollison has passed away in the past 5 years, but Jeff is still leading it. And Jeff is actually going to be our teacher whenever Emmy, my girlfriend, and I, we're going to Australia to the Permaculture Research Institute, and we're going to get our design certificates there. And we're going to be there for a month, and then once we have those design certificates, we can, begin to do consultancy work. We can start holding, workshops with permaculture in the name, and then we can also get, on the same page together. And after we get those, we really want to buy a piece of property. And not just any place, a place that is going to fit, our particular vision. And then we'll be able to really, start on our big project and have a demonstration site that will inspire more people to, start taking back some of their independence by not necessarily making money off of the food that they produce, but using it as a way to, take on more responsibility for your existence, where you're producing something, instead of being a consumer, you're being a producer of something.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a change in the culture and our attitudes.
Right.
But, I really think that people are getting excited about it. And there's just nothing that tastes better or nothing that's as gratifying as like putting the work in and then getting to eat really amazing tasting and nutritious food that, you just picked right before you ate it.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. And that's one of the drivers and passions that keeps me going. We really do our best to try to, stay out of the grocery store besides buying, Topo Chicos and spices, but we really try to buy, a lot of our meat. We either like to raise it, hunt it, source it locally. Don't really go to the grocery store to buy meat too often.
Yeah. I could definitely see how it's like would be incredibly gratifying to, start from nothing and come up with food and then eat it, and like you say, I mean, it does seem like things are shifting to more organic and, cleaner eating. And it seems like growing your own food is kind of the next step in that process. Like you said, I mean, it is expensive if you go to get it from a grocery store. I'm definitely learning that.
It's so expensive, especially the organic. And the grocery stores, unless you go to Fiesta for his temple, you're not going to find much that's locally sourced, And there's not really a good farmer's market in Monroe.
Right.
which is about to change. There's some exciting stuff happening. We're gonna have one at Flying Tiger.
Okay.
Starting in the spring, man.
That's awesome.
I'm working with the Ruston
That's a great
Farmers.
place to have it.
Isn't it? Now that Corey's got the food truck out there.
Yeah, got the food truck. I mean, they're not using it during the morning or whatever. So
yeah, we're gonna work on making that happen.
It's a great space out there and everything.
I'm going to partner with, I just gave a presentation at the North Louisiana Farm Fresh, which is the nonprofit organization behind the Ruston Farmers Market.
Okay.
On partnering with them and starting to get, their foot into the door in Monroe.
Yeah.
Because local food, I've been traveling all over the state the past year and going to workshops and conferences, and Monroe is so far behind as far as having a local food scene or a local food culture.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was about to ask. In Ruston, you see people like Desi and Bad Wolf. And,
shout out Grown and Graze,
for sure, for sure. I don't necessarily see that in Monroe, West Monroe. I don't see that small localized food scene here. I mean, is it? I don't know.
Yeah, so look, there are some people out there doing the Lord's work. I really like Miss Angie at Fiesta Nutrition. I really like Miss Dana over at For His Temple.
Yeah, I've heard great things about both of those people.
Look, man, Dana's got a Rolodex of over 80 farmers, and she sends me a text all the time. What do you have? What do you have? And she's walking the walk, talking the talk. I really have a lot of admiration and respect for her on doing her best and going out of her way to buy as locally as possible. And that goes for Desi too. Desi, and that's a great segue into me telling a little bit about the farm. Desi started buying so much from us that we were almost forced into starting our LLC.
Okay.
So, whenever our berry season was hitting hard, he was just buying berries after berries, like for not only for their ice cream, but for Grown and Graze breakfast. Mm-hmm. And so Desi was really like the motivator of like, look, man, if I spend more than $600 with you guys, you gotta, excuse me, Topo Chico, man. You gotta be legit.
Yeah.
And so, in 2017, we got our tax ID number, became an LLC, and that's whenever we really started to, start to scale up.
Yeah.
And
so was that idea already there? Was Current Farms already an idea?
We were already at the Ruston Farmers Market. It was just a little bit of a side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
So we were making just enough to, pay for the chicken feed. I was just selling what extra vegetables I had, but we weren't in any restaurants. We weren't. We were at a farmer's market. We were at the Ruston Farmers Market. We've been there for 3 years. And so we hadn't really expanded outside of just that small localized scene. But once we got the LLC going and, certain circumstances that were a little bit out of our control and some land came into our use, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But we really started to have products. We didn't really know what to do with them. And so then we started finding markets. That's whenever I found Desi and Miss Angie and Dana, and I knew them from having shopped there and
mm-hmm.
stuff. But no, it was different to kind of go from being a consumer to go to being a producer, and we learned a lot.
It's cool that you put it in those terms, because that is what it is. But I never thought about it in that way. It's like, you think about, when I hear consumer and producer, you think about natural life, plants versus animals type of deal. But whenever you put it into a human aspect, it makes a lot of sense. I guess I've never thought about it in those terms,
Yeah. Well, we went from shopping at the farmer's market to selling at the farmer's market in just a year.
Yeah.
And that was because I was so motivated by how much better, not only how much cheaper the food was buying it at the farmer's market, but how much better it was, because it was so fresh. Mm-hmm. And there was this one lady in the corner of the Ruston Farmers Market, Sue Renner, and she had the most amazing carrots and beets and green leafy vegetables. And I said to myself, I can do this.
Yeah.
You know, like if she's got this beautiful table, like I can have that. And so she's always kind of been definitely my market motivation. But
I love that because like that was kind of why I started doing a podcast. You know, like I see other people doing it, and like I was like, I know interesting people. I could, I can do that. It's just, it's also funny that you say like Desi was like motivated you. One, because if anybody has a conversation with Desi, he'll probably motivate you to do something.
He's an awesome guy, man.
But he's definitely done the same for me in pursuing all of this stuff. Yeah, continue on. I'm sorry.
And so, and it was just really small, man. We had a small flock of chickens. And then I was just growing a few front yard vegetables, selling extra. And then my brother, I can't believe I haven't talked about him yet. But my brother and I co-own and operate Current Farms. Okay. So we're in it 50-50.
Gotcha. Is your brother Tuna?
Yeah, my brother is Tuna.
So I was looking at your Instagram or something. I saw somebody Tuna. And
yeah.
I clicked on his profile. 0 photos of himself, which is respectable. But
look, man. So Tuna, whenever we were going, and I'll tell a quick backstory on how I got the name. So not only was the office real big at this point in time, but whenever we were in high school at OCS, we had to tuck our shirts in, and he hated it. And so he had this big blue zip-up hoodie, or jacket, and he would just zip it up like part way at the bottom just to hide his shirt tail. And he would only wear a white t-shirt, and he literally looked like a big bluefin tuna. And so that name has just kind of stuck, and now he's embraced it, and he loves it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Tuna bought a big flock of ducks.
Okay.
And, because we were at the farmer's market, and we were trying to figure out where we fit.
Yeah.
Because, like, coming at it from a hobby, like at this point in time, we were a hobby farm, and we didn't want to step on any toes. Mm-hmm. And so we were like, trying to be respectful of like other family farms, like people that are making their living off of doing this work. And we were like, where could we fit into the niche? And so duck eggs was a big thing. There was a Holly Creek had a few duck eggs, but they always sold out. And then people were like, where's duck egg? Like, we want some more duck eggs. And so we got some ducks, and my parents have a pond out there. You guys can see some of that stuff on our Current Farms Instagram page if you want to see what the farm looks like. And so once we got the ducks, it really opened up lots of opportunities for the farm, because the ducks are a little bit more versatile than the chickens are.
I was going to say, could you talk about the difference between ducks and chickens and duck eggs and chicken eggs, I guess?
Oh, yeah. So chickens, they just have different forage habits.
Okay.
Through our rotational grazing, we use the chickens, not only to make compost, but to also prepare the ground for, the eventual coming of planting out perennial contoured strip forest.
Okay.
That are going to be used to, plant perennial plants out that are going to be used to not only feed us, but also for forage opportunities for the livestock that we'll eventually have out there. And so they're on a rotational grazing, continually improving the soil, working the soil, and making compost, plus giving us eggs.
Gotcha.
So that's the role that the chickens fill. And we use them. We have a small hatchery as part of the farm too. So we hatch out a lot of different breeds chicken eggs. Mainly we do the Americanas, which are blue egg layers or green egg layers. They're the little chickens with whiskers. They're so personable, because like you can pick these chickens up, and like you can just walk up to them and pick them up, and they're real tame, but they're also like so diverse in their color. And their little whiskers, like I just can't deal with them, man. They're so cute to me.
So is that I've heard like a single-breasted chicken, double-breasted chicken?
Yeah. So these aren't necessarily designed to be meat birds.
Okay.
We've raised a few meat birds, but there's just not a lot of money in doing small batch pastured chicken, especially with the way that processing fees are. Mm-hmm. But once we get our own processing facility in the future, we'll be able to do a lot of cool things because we like to utilize, every single product that a chicken has. Like we're trying, and part of permaculture is, using those products and stacking functions on top of each other.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
you saw our mobile coop out there, so it's portable. We can collect rainwater from the roof into a small barrel.
So it had a little gutter on there.
Yeah, so it's got a little gutter on there that we can hook up to the water. The eggs are laid right on the side, and so we can use it to not only spread their manure out and kind of control their smell in this urban setting that we have, but it's stacked to collect rainwater, collect eggs. It's the place where they sleep. It's just about like not wasting your efforts on making more work for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you're constantly trying to become more and more efficient and that type of deal.
Yeah, and so, we sell the feathers.
Wow.
Yeah, like we've got a little cedar block and we stick holes in it, 2 for $1. Kids love it at the farmer's market, especially our big turkey feathers.
Okay, yeah,
and some of the duck feathers are really beautiful as well.
Okay. So it's just like a decoration thing, is that?
Yeah, fashion.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get in with some hat companies, making some feather stuff happen.
Yeah, I know there's some local people around here.
Yeah, so it's about like utilizing every product. And like, for instance, on our ducks and our geese, whenever we have our processing facility, we won't just be able to sell the meat, but we'll be able to, harvest their down. And then, Emmy is interested in making clothes. We'll be able to make, sustainable down vests and be in fashion boutiques. And so it's like, not finding a way to utilize all the products.
Yeah.
So a duck has, while the chicken has, it scratches, it makes compost, it lays eggs, it has all of these products. Well, ducks have a lot of those same products, but they're semi-aquatic, which means that their forage opportunities nearly double.
Okay.
So water is a lot more conducive for life than the soil is. It can harness a lot more of that. Water is life.
Yes. Yeah.
And so the ducks really do a great job. Our pond has really transformed. It was just taken over with this aquatic grass, and since the ducks have come in, we notice more frogs. We notice an increase in like how just the vegetation in the pond has just been absolutely cleared out, and and their manure is really valuable. So we pin them up for a long time and kind of have them in this big corral, and because they don't really like to sleep inside of a building.
Okay. I guess like maybe here in Louisiana you think about ducks, you think about mallards and speckled bellies and that kind of deal.
Yeah.
So like what kind of ducks do you have? I guess.
So we have it's about 10 different breeds. We've got this homesteading variety. Our favorites are the Muscovy ducks.
Okay.
We really like them, man, a lot. They clutch their own eggs, and so
What does that mean?
So it means that they'll like have a nest, and they do a great job of laying their own eggs. And the female and the male both take on parental roles. And so these ducks, they don't really eat of the feed that we put out. They're like free ranging. They forage probably, I would say, 80% of their diet.
Okay.
Their favorite food are mosquito larvae. But they're an Argentinian. They're kind of like a hybrid. They're not a duck. They're not a goose. They're a Muscovy.
Interesting.
They're their own specific, almost species.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, man. In like the corner, a female will clutch her eggs in the corner or find a spot in the barn. And whenever she hatches her eggs out, the males, and while she's sitting on her nest, the males protect her at night. And so like 5 of them will form a little semicircle. And whenever the babies are born, the males escort the hens where they go. Like, it's really amazing to watch a parent. Like, the chickens and the other ducks aren't like that.
Right.
But we've got Pekin ducks, we've got Rouen ducks. Some of them lay blue eggs.
Yeah, what do you mean by that? You were talking about blue and green eggs.
Yeah. It's just fun, man. So some chickens, some ducks, they've been bred to have that blue egg laying gene. And
So it's like literally a blue egg.
Yeah, look, man. Look, I saw one
that's
out
just
there.
Strange to me. So
Yeah, look, there's actually before you leave, there's one that was laid out there. I saw a blue egg out there before. Right. But yeah, they're called. Some people call them the Easter egger chickens or ducks. But the duck egg specifically, man, it's sometimes it's about 70% larger than a chicken egg, and to me, it has a lot more nutrition in it because their foraging capabilities are just so high. Because they're not only eating vegetation, but they're eating a lot of different protein sources, of diverse selection of protein sources.
Yeah.
So, from snails to baby fish to crawfish, they're getting a ton of diversification in their diet. And so I really like to eat the duck eggs. And now that we added turkeys, I really have come to love eating the turkey eggs because the turkeys are, every single one of the different species of bird have a different forage habit, have a different diet. And so they all get after a specific portion of what we're trying to target. So the turkeys are really grazers, and they'll eat a few acorns, but they're really going after grass seed. And whenever we harvest them and eat one, I always look into their digestive system. It's amazing how many snails are picked up by these turkeys.
Wow.
Man. It's really incredible. But so we have a pretty large incubator, and we hatch it during the spring. We hatch and sell a lot of turkeys. We haven't been very successful on getting ducks to hatch. It's a bit more complicated.
Gotcha.
But no, man, chicken and turkeys have been having great success on getting those hatched.
Is a turkey egg bigger?
Oh yeah, it's a little bit bigger than a duck egg.
You eat turkey egg?
Yeah. And it's beautiful, man. The turkey eggs they're all spotted.
Okay.
And they have a different shape than a regular egg. They're a bit more conical in their shape, or I don't know if that's
yeah. I'm following you.
But yeah, so they have more of like a point,
right?
Or like a sharper point than a regular egg does. But yeah, they're pretty large, and at the farmers market we offer all three whenever they're all laying. The spring is the real heavy time for laying. So the ducks, they're seasonal layers. So right now they're not laying any eggs.
Gotcha.
And then in spring they pump them out.
Okay.
So yeah, that's just one aspect of the farm. And then we also have an orchard in Downsville, and we've inherited this responsibility. One of our friends at the farmers market, it's an elderly couple, Tom and Dee, wonderful people. And they were really inspirational to getting us started on the track of perennial food production. I was really excited to meet Tom, and he was so generous. They were the booth right across the way from us, and during the lull, the last 30 minutes of the market, you get talking with people, and Mr. Tom invited us out, and I couldn't believe what we saw when we went out there. Mr. Tom he's in his 70s, he's retired, and he's got about 2.5 acres of blackberries, blueberries, and figs, but he has a diverse variety of them. And so from the middle of May through September, there's a steady crop of something coming off.
Gotcha.
So they're all different types. There's 7 kinds of blackberries, 12 kinds of figs.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
12 kinds of blueberries. And so they all stagger different weeks they're ready.
Wow.
So it's really amazing. And unfortunately, 2 years ago, Mr. Tom was diagnosed with leukemia, and we would come out, and they would do pick your own, and we had a good relationship. And at the first market 2 years ago, I saw that Tom and Dee weren't there, and I asked the market manager, so where are Tom and Dee? And he said, you didn't know? I was like, no, what? And he said, well, Tom's real sick. And so after the market, I immediately went by there.
Yeah.
And that's whenever they asked us to step in, because they were going to till the place under. They weren't going to be able to take care of it anymore.
Right.
And so, we've been able to step in and perform a lot of those duties. And we haven't been able to do as good of a job as I like, just because the distance.
Right.
And we have already had our own operation going on. So we had to let some things go, let some responsibilities slide to pick up the slack over there. And I wish that we could, he was retired and he really maintained it. Like there wasn't a weed over there. And we haven't been able to achieve that, but we're working on, setting up our rotational grazing, our compost systems over there, and do some water harvesting, and start to make that place produce a little bit more. But it's amazing how many blackberries, how many figs, and that's how we got into a door with a lot of the restaurants. Is I was stuck, like I would pick the first year that we did it, I would have like 25 gallons of blackberries, and no one to sell them to.
Start making some pies or something.
Yeah. And so, I mean, dude, I ate a lot. We eat a ton of them, man.
Yeah.
But no, that's whenever I started going to restaurants. Okay. And that's what got us into the door with, and we were really blessed. I mean, and I hate to say that because, Mr. Thomas suffered so much with this disease, but it really opened up an opportunity for us to skip and bypass this like 9 years of work, and we almost like got to step into the future of like where we would be,
where you want to be. Yeah.
And like we're able to like see the things that we would do differently, because
of the work that he's already put in.
Yeah, because of the work, and we're able to observe, and that's part of permaculture is like, I mean, I'm always observing and like, filtering what I see in the landscape through the design principles of permaculture. And so, like we ended up being in like 12 different restaurants around town, from bakeries to health food stores, like Big Mama's was making cobblers. Corey Barr bought a ton of them last year. We and that feels good to like put your stuff out there and have a lot of people be able to sample it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and that was a different part. And like working with restaurants, is a big learning curve. It's a lot different from, selling to individuals. And, it was a big learning experience. We're still learning a lot.
I was about to say, is part of that like figuring out how much your product is worth?
It's worth, yeah. Man, it's so hard. Whenever you start, I mean, whenever you're doing the, small time sustainable farming, like what we've got going on, it's hard to, add your time into the equation.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we struggle with.
I think that's maybe something that all of us young people that are starting businesses or have businesses are still trying to figure out to some degree is, how much we're worth and how much is, you can charge for whatever and still sustain yourself and get the people to come back,
Yeah.
So.
And it's a great avenue, for people to learn more about our farm, because I really think that, culinary arts are a way to really push the local food movement, because, man, you give people an experience. Like, whenever these really high quality ingredients are in the hands of these really capable artists,
yes,
like, man, people come and they have this experience with food and they're like, oh my God, this tastes so good. And I think that that's inspiring, in its own sense. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about, selling to restaurants. But moving on from that, we've been at the farmer's market for 3 years, and we just kept running into always having extra, or not having what I like to call like a guaranteed market.
Yeah, yeah.
And so last year we shook things up a little bit, and we took some risks, and they paid off. So we started a CSA, which stands for Community Supported Agriculture, and people basically become a member of the farm.
Okay.
So it's almost like a subscription service. So the CSA that we did went for 6 weeks. And it was the first one. Monroe doesn't have a CSA option, so we were the only one besides Dana at Forest Temple was going to Inglewood and bringing back. They're a big organic farm in Alexandria, and she was bringing back CSA subscriptions, and that was the only option before us. So it's really like people haven't really been involved in that type of relationship with farmers, and so but it was really overwhelming. Emmy works in marketing at ULM, and she was able to create this Google Doc and sign-up sheet that it just blew me away how easy it was for people to sign up. So we just shared the link, and we were just looking for 10 people, and everyone pays up front, and so it's a little bit of a risk. So during those 6 weeks, like, we could have a crop failure, or something could happen, and things just don't work out the way that they're supposed to.
So you're talking about a subscription for vegetables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So like we would.
So maybe a year or two ago, I was listening to a podcast. I forget what it is, but there's a farm in Ireland, I believe, like Molehill Farms or something. But they do that. For like the 20-30 mile radius around their farm, there's a bunch of families that live there, and they provide groceries for all of the family all year round.
Yeah.
And like, he was talking a lot about how that could potentially save the world. You localize farming, and everybody provides for them, for their community or whatever.
Yeah.
And you kick out big farming, and it really like ultimately saves the world.
Yeah. Well, and this is what I've learned through being involved in like local food leadership training and stuff, is like, what we have to do is we have to figure out how to make industrial agriculture more sustainable, because it can't just go away.
Right.
Like, it has, like, its function is so critical to developing like that base of a diet, that, I mean, it would just be really hard to phase that out. But in addition to making them more sustainable, we need to be able to scale up small-time producers like our operation to be able to fit the needs and to get like the certifications that we need to sell to schools, to sell to big grocery stores like Brookshire's, and so that's one of the things that I'm really working towards figuring out, man, is how we can scale up and how we can start, fitting different needs. Like, what do we want to do? And what demand is there? And so with the CSA, it was we were able to have like a guaranteed market. So we didn't have as many vegetables because we didn't have as many vegetables left over at the end of every farmer's market.
Yeah.
So like, man, it would just be the most demoralizing thing to like work so hard, because we don't use any synthetic. We're chemical free farm. We don't use any synthetic fertilizers. You saw our compost operation. We make all the compost and all the fertilizer that goes in to the soil. Like, we don't take any shortcuts. And I forgot where I was going from there. Okay.
You started the CSA.
Oh yeah, so the CSA, man. And so it really gave us a guaranteed market to where we wouldn't like haul a big load of turnips to the farmer's market and then be left over with 20 bundles of turnips because everyone had turnips. It gave us a way to have a guaranteed market for the vegetables that we produce. So one of the things that I really liked about it is through permaculture, like Jeff Lawton gives out a series of directives. So like it's not a choice that you have. Like, you got to make compost. And one of the directives is like our concrete goal of what we're trying to achieve on a sociological level is to get 10% of the population, which this was reality during World War II. Like, it wasn't that long ago whenever this was the way things were, but we want to get 10% of people involved in the production of food.
Okay.
Like, that's the concrete goal that we're working towards.
Because that 10% could provide for the rest of the
Well,
90.
if 10% of the population grew enough food to feed 10 people, we've kind of solved it.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so,
yeah.
And that's what we did, man. We only had,
And that's relatively feasible?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Especially with a permaculture setting, because the abundance through perennial agriculture grows every year. Like every single year, the inputs become less than the outputs over time.
Gotcha.
And so, every year it's more abundant. There's more food being produced, and there's less work that has to go into it.
Because the seeds are already in the ground, or
Well, the plants, the perennial, it's replicating a forest. And so, like, we look to the 9 niches that the temperate forest has in this region. And so there's the canopy, the subcanopy, the shrub layer, all the way down to the mycorrhizal level with the mushrooms,
Gotcha.
right? So it's all about filling each niche so that there's not any wasted space.
Gotcha.
And filling each one of the niches and using those different layers to create an edge profile. So like from the grass and the shrubs and the ground cover at the very bottom, you want to go and kind of like a line from the canopy all the way down to the ground to make most use of the sunlight. So it's really just about, and that's where I talked about earlier, is doing the contoured strip forests, which are 3 canopy trees wide.
Okay.
So, you pick like 2 fruit trees, or you could pick a fruit tree, a nut tree, and then you have a nitrogen fixing support tree. And those are like what you go off. And then you just fill in the space around it thoughtfully with all those other niches.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And
that makes sense.
yeah, and they're all edible plants, or if they're not edible, they're a support tree that is providing either nitrogen fixation or, shade or support, or eventual mulch for the trees that you want to survive. And so,
What is a nitrogen providing tree?
yeah, so it'd be things like redbud, mimosa, honey locust, and the tree itself doesn't fix nitrogen. The tree's roots provide the perfect ecosystem to where nitrogen fixing bacteria have a symbiotic relationship.
Okay.
And so, like, where a redbud is planted, the soil becomes more fertile over time. And there are other things like, clover is a nitrogen fixer. Any type of legume, like any bean or pea, is a nitrogen fixer.
So you're saying nitrogen fixer. So
Yeah.
they add nitrogen to it, or they
To the
neutralize it, or
No, they add nitrogen to the soil through the bacteria
that
in the
comes
soil.
along with the plant.
No. The bacteria is in the soil.
Okay.
It just hosts, and like it transforms what's coming out from the roots into nitrogen. It just provides like a host, like a dwelling place.
All right.
for that
Okay.
bacteria.
I'm following you now.
Yeah.
All right. That's fair.
And so, and that's one of the beautiful things, man, is like here in this temperate climate, 60% of all life is below the soil. And so creating an ecosystem and creating healthy soil, isn't it crazy, man? Oh, look, dude, just go dig anywhere this time of year, and all those grubs are underground, man. Everything right now is underground.
Yeah.
And so creating a healthy ecosystem where those type of animals can thrive is what we're going after. So back to the CSA.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really liked about it is that we followed that principle of getting 10%, or like feeding 10 people off of our operation. So we kept it really small.
Okay.
So we just had 10 members, and excuse me. So we had individuals and we had families. So the family boxes got twice as much. And so really, whenever you looked at it like individual versus family, we had about 15 shares that we were filling. So if it were just all people, it would have been close to 15 people, but we had 4 families in the mix. And we asked everyone, because I kind of have a bit of a philanthropic heart, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to do some good for our community in Marion.
Okay.
And what better way, I thought, than to try to give people free food. And so we asked all the CSA members, so the individuals gave, I think it was like $4.60 extra onto their CSA share. And then the families gave whatever that is doubled, a little bit over $9. And we used that money to create an 11th share that we gave away to a family that otherwise couldn't afford it.
Wow.
And the family that we chose, there's some family friends, and they live in Marion, and it's a great-grandmother caring for her 2 great-grandchildren. And then her son also lives there. But, you know, the age range in that household is 85 to 12. And so we really wanted to step in and, like, provide them with food. Because Marion is... the people there don't have food security. You know, there's not a lot of like fresh food options.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can go to Dollar General and you can buy junk food. Mm-hmm. You can buy the frozen stuff. I don't even know if you can buy a head of lettuce at Dollar General.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I remember our friend Amelia Pierce, we went to a Walmart in Ruston one time, and she was like, wow, so many colors. She was like, you go to Walmart in Farmerville and it's just like not like this. Like the vegetables just are non-existent. So it's sad to hear that exists, that, you know, those most almost basic resources are not provided to people in smaller towns like that.
Well, we're going to work to fix that, man. This program that I just participated in, I just graduated from it, but it was the Food Fellows program that was sponsored by the Central Louisiana Economic Development Alliance, or CLEDA, is their acronym. And they're out of Alexandria, and they host this free workshop that anyone in the state can participate in. And they accepted, I think they had close to 70 people apply, and they chose about 20 of us to participate in the program, but it's completely free. And it was either every week or every 2 weeks in Alexandria. It just depended. But we went there and we learned how to become local food leaders. And we were able to reconnect, or able to network with other people around the state that are really, man, doing the Lord's work. Like, and on the front lines of solving, you know, big issues that we're facing. Yeah. Especially urban centers, man. And so that brings me to, you know, talk about food policy, which is, you know, people ask, what is food policy? Well, it's, you know, it's those rules that are set in place that govern how, you know, food operates, whether, you know, it's food safety, farm rules for certifications, or even down to municipal level on, like, you know, the ordinances for urban farming, keeping livestock, you know, what's in the schools, like, it's everything involved in the food system, man. And the food system is a really complicated and a really big part of, you know, our everyday life. And I think it's something that a lot of people don't really have a full understanding of, or a full comprehension of just what all it takes to put food into places. But man, they're doing some amazing work in New Orleans and Alexandria with food policy, and the way that they're doing that is by forming food policy councils. And there's about 370 food policy councils or committees in the United States, and they're all working towards the goal of making local, healthy, and not just local, but making healthy food options. Here, let me look into the camera for this so that everyone knows. So what the goal is to make local healthy food options equitable for everyone that wants that choice. So regardless of where you live, regardless of how much you make, you have the choice to choose between something healthy and something not healthy. And people don't have a choice a lot of times.
Right.
So, these, we don't like to use the term food desert anymore. We just like to call them food insecure areas.
Okay.
And so these are places where there aren't fresh options. These are places where it's not necessarily walkable, where if people have to go to the grocery store, they can either rely on a substandard public transportation system. They could walk and have to carry their groceries back. Or they can go to the corner store, the service station, and they could buy crap.
Right.
Like, it's all about convenience. And so some of the things that food policy councils have done, I'll use New Orleans as an example. Really, they've been a great... the Food Policy Council of New Orleans has really been a great resource on, helping me understand and like get the ball rolling here. And so what they've done is after Hurricane Katrina, the city council formed a food policy advisory committee. And they did a food assessment, and they did a ton of surveys working with Tulane University to find out what the needs of the community were. They didn't make any assumptions. They went in there with the strategic sociological data, and they came up with a list of suggestions. And man, they had about 13 goals they wanted to achieve, and they're about 2 away from completing that. Okay. So they've really done some cool stuff. So some of the broad things of what they do is providing low interest, interest-free, or forgivable loans for people who want to open grocery stores in food insecure areas, but you only get that loan if you have 15% of your retail space dedicated to fresh food. They got it to where the city changed an ordinance so that Dollar General, Family Dollar had to carry local food, or could carry local food.
Nice.
Because like the infrastructure was there.
Yeah.
It's just the option wasn't. So it was a way for local farmers to get involved, and it created a new market. So like all of these things of like getting more grocery stores open, they start with having healthy options, and then like it creates a demand for having more local food being produced. And it's not only a way to grow the economy, but man, you tackle healthcare, you tackle people's happiness. Like it's there's so many beneficial things to making incentives for local food production. One of the really so the SNAP EBT program, they do have the double bucks for a farmer's market. So
okay.
A farmer's market has
I knew that farmers markets took that stuff, but I didn't know how that worked.
Yeah, this is fun. Okay. So look, man, it's really cool. So the SNAP program, if any farmer's market that is credited and has applied with the state and can take the money in, which the Ruston Farmers Market can, you can take $10 there on your SNAP card, and then you have $20 that you can spend at the market. So you basically get 10 free dollars.
Wow.
And so it's a great way of, we already subsidize big agriculture so much. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that it's a great way to promote that and build that relationship between local farms and people that, really couldn't, necessarily afford to spend a couple extra dollars on buying local. I think that's a great program. But New Orleans took that, and they have mobile markets. So it's like a farmer's market on a truck.
Okay.
And so, like, the farmers load the truck up. The truck has, an operator, and then they can drive out, take people's SNAP, and like you can go to really like food insecure areas, and instead of setting up a whole farmer's market, like you've got the mobility to go wherever.
That's
and to
beautiful.
Serve like all kinds of
that's awesome.
Yeah, man. And so it's a great way to get out there and reach a part of the community that is disengaged, that feels disenfranchised, feels like no one cares about them, because we do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm really passionate about we're gonna have our first food policy council meeting for Monroe in January. I've got a couple of nonprofits, some local businesses, and some individuals that are passionate about it that are ready to go. We're gonna start making some stuff happen because
That's awesome.
I really want to see more urban agriculture in Monroe. I want to see more grocery stores that are independent grocery stores.
For sure, for sure.
And it's about like not only making our community healthier through local food, but like creating working with the city on like setting up mentorship programs with community gardens and putting in perennial systems at like churches and schools. Like the possibilities are endless because none of this work has been done in Monroe, but we're gonna have some passionate people working on it. We're gonna start changing the culture.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Baby
I
steps.
love that.
Baby steps.
Yeah. I want to talk about your compost pile back there.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's how really you got my attention. I saw you running around town, hitting up restaurants and local businesses and trying to get scraps. So I guess like when did you come up with that idea? How do you go about that? You just go walk in the door and say, "Hey, give me your leftovers."
Yeah. Well, so whenever I lived in Bath, I mean, we've been composting. I mean, like, like one of the first things I started doing was composting. Learn about it. So we've got a nice process down, and I'll just give a quick rundown on the process for making compost.
Yeah.
Anybody can do this. So the first...
Can I pause you for 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
I want to make sure that we get this, and this thing's about to die. So anyway, sorry about the break. We were talking about composting.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so rule number 1, the compost pile has to be a cubic meter. So, 3.5 feet wide, 3.5 feet tall, 3.5 feet, what is it? Length, width, height. Yeah, man, there we go.
Tall, wide, deep.
Tall, wide, deep. So it's got to be, 1 cubic meter. And
is that just to like keep heat in, or?
Yeah, well, that's the minimum size that it could be to heat up to the appropriate temperature. So we like to layer it, and the ratio is 2/3 carbon, 1/3 nitrogen.
So explain that. You were saying that real casually out there in the backyard.
Okay. So carbon is wood chips, sawdust, old leaves.
Okay.
That's all carbon. And then the nitrogen is things like fresh cut grass, vegetable scraps, and animal manure. Okay. And so each one of those has, there's a lot different nitrogen value in chicken manure than there is in like cow and horse manure. So really cow, horse, those are my favorite manures. And those, like, if I had to choose of, what manure to make compost with, I've used all of them. Like, I'll choose horse and cow just because they're going to be, or horse, cow, rabbit. Let me say that. Worm. Sorry, keep adding more. Horse, cow, rabbit, worm. Those are what I really try to go after. And all you do is you layer.
I guess continue on with the manure. What's the difference? What separates those?
Okay, so it's just about, each animal processes the what they consume differently.
Yeah.
So, I really like to stick with herbivores.
Okay.
And it's just because, like, the cows, like, the digestive system, it's not completely as, like, broken down as, like, and that's what makes it not as hot as, like, chicken manure. So chickens, they just have they don't have 2 different holes that their excrement goes in. They have one vent.
Gotcha.
And so their poo and their pee is a combo.
Ah.
So, like, they're peeing and pooping in the same spot, and so that's what makes their stuff real hot.
Gotcha.
And then, like, each, like, so
like
goats
physically
and sheep,
hot.
No, just like hot in terms of like whenever you're using it, and that's one of the terms that you use.
Like
in
really high
composting.
nitrogen.
It's like high nitrogen is
Yeah.
hot stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So and like so a cow manure is a bit colder. If
Yeah.
That, and so and like a thing in the middle is like goat.
Okay.
So.
But you want like it like halfway broken down, but not completely broken down. type
Yeah,
of deal.
yeah. And so it's got a lot of like organic matter still in it.
Right.
You know, it's not as high of a nitrogen.
You can
content.
still see like straw and that type of deal.
Yeah, and whenever you see like a fresh cow patty out this time, you just got a bunch of sprouts coming out of it, you know? So like what you got to do is you have to heat that pile up enough to kill those seeds that are in everything. And so the step, and this is a 21 to 28 day cycle. It just depends on the time of year. It depends on, you know, if you miss a day turning it or whatever. So we like to layer it like lasagna. So, you know, a nice layer of carbon, layer of nitrogen, kind of will step on it, and we're watering it down with a water hose the whole time. And if you see it start to leak out of the bottom, like if water starts to come out of the bottom, you've watered it too much. You need to back off. So we just layer it up until it's about a cubic meter. And that's really, you know, it takes you about 20 minutes to turn a cubic meter pile. And it's like the bare minimum of composting. So you pile it all up, you wet it down, and then you cover it with a tarp and leave it for 4 days. And after that, you turn it every 2 days until it's completed. And yeah, that's how you make compost, man. That's the system.
Does the cold weather slow that down at all?
Oh no, man. On day 7, so it sits for 4 days. You turn it, and then it sits for 2. So that's day 6. On day 7, in between those the second and third turn, that's whenever it's going to hit its hottest internal temperature and kill most of the seeds that are in the compost.
Gotcha.
And acorns too.
Okay.
That's one of the big things, man. You miss a couple of acorns, you got trees growing in your stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we like to do small batch. Out at the farm, we've got our tractors with our front end loaders, and we can mix up big piles of compost.
Yeah.
And we've got there's a sawmill right down the road where we source the sawdust, and just because of the availability, I like to use the chicken house manure because we can get it for free.
Yeah.
And it's incredible.
You have to pay for the sawdust?
No, it's all free.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, he likes us to take the pile.
Yeah.
And one of the investments we made in the farm was a PTO driven wood chipper.
Okay.
So it goes on the back of the tractor.
Right.
And you know, we can chip up to a 6-inch log. And so it's nice to be particular. So we can go out and like I can go through the woods with my little cart, and I can pick out all of the limbs that have like fungal activity on them.
Yeah.
And so, dude, I can get all of these like halfway broken down logs, and I can make this really valuable wood chip. Bamboo silica is a very great like mulch because it doesn't have any seeds in it. It's slow to break down, and it holds water.
Right.
And so, you know, we'll go in and we'll chip a bunch of bamboo.
I'm about saying it can be incredibly abundant in some places here in Louisiana.
And they're like, thank you for chopping this down.
Yeah.
And it grows back, and there's
Yeah.
always more.
like the next year.
And so, you know, it's all about trying to source. Or Mr. Tom, the guy that has leukemia now, one of my inspirational quotes that I got from him was the term aggressive resourcefulness. And even though I'm not necessarily the aggressive type, but man, you keep bothering people, then you know they're gonna give you the stuff. But
Yeah. Same
but,
thing with the podcast.
but yeah,
I kept bugging you till you said yes.
So, you know, I took that, you know, I've lived in the country nearly my whole life, you know, out in or not necessarily in Marion, but in a rural setting.
Yeah.
You know, and so living in the Garden District is the first time I've ever lived in the city. And so now I've kind of brought this composting mentality with me to this area. So, the places I'm in right now, and we're just starting off small, working out the kinks, figuring out what people like, what people don't like, and it's amazing how out of the way people will go to help you. But no, the restaurants that we're in and coffee shops, we're in Taste of India. They give us you saw the the bucket. They fill up about 18 gallons of compost every day.
Yeah.
So I have to pick up from there every single day. Thank God they're closed Mondays. But man, they are pumping out so many vegetable scraps. And I also get compost from the Washita Christian Cafeteria and Standard Coffee, and then Fiesta Nutrition and Dro Coffee.
Yeah. So just vegetables and coffee grounds.
Yeah, vegetables
right?
and coffee grounds.
So
No
fresh meat,
veggies.
no bones, nothing like that.
No, fresh vegetables. So Taste of India is a lot of cauliflower scraps, cabbage, onions, carrots, potato peels. All that kind of stuff. The chickens get free choice on picking out what they want, and then the rest we just pile on the compost pile and get it started. But
yeah, I thought that was really cool. We just dumped that bucket into the chicken pen and let them pick through it.
yeah, and it's almost enough to completely feed them. Between them working the compost pile and throwing in the scratch grains that sprout.
Yeah, what you mentioned that. What are scratch grains?
Yeah, so scratch grains is just a mix of it's got all kinds of stuff in it. It's got like sorghum and grain or like wheat, like all kinds. Man, it's got like 7 different kinds of grains in it.
But this is like a package that you buy?
Yeah, it's we buy it in bulk.
Yeah.
From either Bastard Feed and Seed or from O'Neill's. We can get it in a big bag. And look, I'll just throw it out right whenever I get close to completing the compost pile. Right before I throw that last layer of leaves on, I'll just cover the whole thing in a nice thick layer. It's about 25 pounds a pile. And I just cover that up, pile the leaves back on, and I'll cover it up, leave it for a couple of days, pull it off, and then the chickens have this whole it's just sprouted grains, and so the nutritional value of those grains has been really doubled, and it gives them an incentive to scratch, because this time of year you don't have as many bugs in the ground. There's bugs out in that compost pile, but there's not as many as it would be during the hot summer.
Yeah. So again, I just want to reiterate for everyone listening and watching. We're 3 blocks from Enoch's right now. We're in the heart of the Garden District, and you have 2 or 3 different forms of composting pile in your backyard.
Yeah.
One of which we're talking about right now with the chickens. And I mean, I thought that was like the coolest damn thing I've seen in a month. Is like you throw all these leaves and vegetables and stuff
And manure, man.
and into the chicken fence, and you pile it up and they pack it down and like sort it, like kind of deal. Like
I just pile it up, man.
Yeah, I love that. Like the more that we're talking, I love how, like you say, it's stacking things on top of each other and just like making things more efficient and more just like easier for yourself, I guess.
Look, Bill Mollison had this great quote from their YouTube video that I watched, man. He's like, and I'll do my best Australian accent. So he's like, if you don't think about it, you find yourself carrying water to chickens. And then you'll ask, well, who's working for who? Who's got the bigger brain? Dude, I just always love, him alluding that carrying water to chickens means you're dumber than that.
Yeah.
And so it's all about trying to use their natural instincts to work towards you having to do less work.
Right.
And that's part of like what permaculture is all about, is like finding as many ways to stack functions on top of each other in creative ways as you can. So right now, nitrogen is hard for us to get in an urban setting. And so we have to drive out to Marion. I got a couple of cow and horse stalls that I keep cleaned out for these folks.
But you mentioned coffee was a big part of that.
Oh yeah, so coffee and
what is it about coffee?
So coffee, it's like whenever coffee is composted, it retains 70% of its organic mass, versus vegetables is somewhere between 10 and 7%. So like my time is just, it's like most use of your time and resources are going into getting coffee. And whenever we get, we're this close to getting our worm farm setup over here. Man, you're more than welcome to check that out whenever it's going on.
Yeah.
But the coffee will all go towards the worm farm. And the worms produce, man, they're one of the most valuable animals, one of the most valuable living creatures that you can keep, man, because they give you so many different products. Not only can you use them as bait, but you can, take that vermicompost that they produce, and we can stick it in a canvas bag, and we can sell that as like, enough tea to make 100 gallons worth of fertilizer for, your own like backyard operation. We're also going to harvest the water that filters through the worm farm, and we're going to be able to tap that and then sell, liquid fertilizer in the form of worm tea.
Worm tea.
Yeah. And so, and you can stick that.
And again,
stuff.
like you, I think you want to explain that a little bit more. That's something that is a liquid that you can just like spray onto.
It's a liquid fertilizer, so you can either keep it how it is, or it can be diluted 20-1. You can stick it in a backpack sprayer, and the leaves from the vegetables can absorb it right through. Like, it doesn't have to necessarily get down to the roots.
Gotcha.
You can just spray it. So, like, on your tomatoes, you just give it a nice good spray right before there's a big rain.
Yeah.
And, man, it is, like, it's the enzymes that the worms produce via their intestines is one of the most diverse and nutritious forms of food for plants. And it really works to, start to create what we talked about earlier, that diverse environment in the soil.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. Like, healthy vegetables and healthy people come from having healthy soil. And, that's what we're all about trying to create. And that's what we're doing with composting. We're making active soil. And here we've just basically been hoarding carbon in the form of leaves.
Yeah.
And so I drive a car, and Emmy has a Prius, but my dad has a truck, and we got a trailer with that. And so sometimes I'll just, about once a week, been coming to Monroe, and we can do close to 3 loads in each trip, and each load holds between 60 to 100 bags of leaves. Just depends on their size. And yeah, we just bring it back, and we are piling them up to right now we're just trying to collect them so that we can do small batch composting continuously, like we always have a supply. And we've piled them up like that so that in their own way they've started to compost and break down. Like, just the sheer mass and volume of it is going to get heated up. Like, if we went out there right now, it wouldn't be long me taking enough pitchfork to it to where we'd start seeing steam come right out of it. Like, it's active and it's engaged, and the longer that it sits and the longer that it cooks, is going to start developing that like bacterial and fungal layer that is going to activate the compost that we make in small batches faster and faster over time. And so
Is a compost something you see selling yourself, or is you hold it all for yourself?
Well, a lot of things would have to happen for me to be able to sell it. So there are a lot of like federal and state regulations that have to apply.
Fair enough.
For you to, like, there's certain processes that you have to follow, because you can't sell like a compost that isn't partially, or that is partially composted and it has like chicken manure in it, because then folks put it on their garden, and if they don't put a nice layer of mulch on top of that, it splashes on top of their salad mix, and they eat the salad mix. And not that I think that they would get E. coli, but the chance of it happening have been increased, right? And so it's all about, like, from a food safety point of view, like, there's a lot of loopholes that I would have to cross before I could sell like the physical compost. But what we want to do is do like workshops. We want to hold like composting workshops and classes and demonstrations. And while we have the Marion location and the Downsville location of the farm, this location here is meant to be a demonstration site to where people can come out and they can see how they can try to achieve some of that independence, even on a small backyard scale. Like, man, we're in the Garden District. We're a block from Enox. We're 2 blocks from Louisville.
Yeah.
Like, we're in the heart, and we've got 32 chickens and a bunch of vegetables that we're growing.
For sure.
And, I'd like to see more people. Like, I want to see a front yard garden in the majority of the homes, like, regardless of its being in the Garden District on the south side of Monroe. Like, we want to make it, the thing to have a front yard garden, man.
Yeah.
And even if you don't eat it,
Make it cool.
Yeah, man. Like, and it is, man. It's so much fun
Yeah.
to be able to walk out and then watch things grow. And I think that it's aesthetically pleasing too.
Definitely. Yeah.
I don't know, man. Amy's grandpa is like, I never thought a garden was beautiful, but I just can't understand that, man. It's the most beautiful thing whenever neighbors start to come together. So, like, our neighbors, man, we'll come home and there's like a bag of carrots on the doorstep, or they'll leave like food scraps and stuff, and then we'll drop some eggs over there.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we're gonna do is start on, composting not only with restaurants but also like households. So I've got these little compost keepers that are about 6 gallons, and I've got 10 of them, and we're just gonna start with 10 family or 10. I'm really going for families, not really individuals. Don't give enough. But,
Right.
But yeah, we want to start getting into people's houses and people that necessarily don't have the capability or the time to compost, but who don't want their stuff to go to the landfill. Because all of this goes back to sequestering carbon. Because, man, whenever that stuff goes into the landfill, it sits in those plastic bags and it does nothing but create carbon dioxide and release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and methane, which is 23 times worse for 23 times more I can't even think of the word, greenhouse gas than it has a much bigger effect than carbon does, and that stuff is directly turned into that. So we're trying to break some of that lapse in the carbon cycle, and do our part to work on environmental activism is a big part of why we do this, man. Is things are really changing. Like, people want to get debatey on climate change, but man, it's not just sea level rising, but it's also like the weather becoming more and more unpredictable. Like, even us doing this for 4 years, like the severity of the droughts that we're facing, like during the summer, it'll just cut off and won't rain for 2.5 months.
Yeah.
Or the rain events that we will have, it'll just be gnarly. Like, man, this last spring we got all of our yearly's worth of water, but I think we got our year's worth of rainfall by like May.
Yeah.
It was an insane year. And so
and the river's way jacked up.
Yeah, and like at the Food Fellows Conference, there was this guy from Iowa that was really talking about how soybean and corn farmers up there are really struggling with unpredictable weather events. And that's one of the reasons why the subsidies keep going up and up, is because there's so many crop failures happening. Like, it's a really big issue that gets put under the table as like not affecting me, but man, it's
not to mention China quit buying soybeans and all that type of stuff as well.
Yeah, and that's another thing, man, is like the environment can't afford for, like, the infrastructure is already here for industrial agriculture, and so these places have been cleared of their forests, they've been developed to grow crops, and then whenever people stop growing crops there, it moves to a different part of the world, Brazil, and they start cutting down the rainforest to grow cheap soybeans that we're not growing anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say, like, big ag has to be more sustainable, because if it goes away, then other countries become deforested, and like, then it just doubles the amount of deforestation that is happening. It creates this huge cycle of like, you know, moving production and changing the landscape to fit that production, and then not producing anymore, but the landscape doesn't go back to being what it was, because, you know, the forests are the natural, like, they are the sequesters of carbon in the cycle, right? Like and whenever you take those away, you know, there's a link in that gap missing.
For sure.
And so, you know, I really, you know, as far as like us doing the composting on a bigger scale here, you know, there's just a lot of things that would have to happen. I'd have to have a place where I could keep a tractor. I have to get a trailer and a truck and really hit at it hard. But no, like this year we've already done 1,000 bags of leaves that we've kept out of the landfill. I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's another thing that you know, has really come to my attention here recently. Is, you know, especially around here, is we just bury our trash. Like, you know, there are other ways to go about it, but we have chosen to bury it. Yeah. And yeah.
Well, man, you guys want to recycle? Washita Green has got a center in West Monroe. You can drop off all your recyclables at Target. Emmy does a fantastic job here of recycling, and we may throw away a bag of trash every 2 weeks.
Wow.
Like,
that's awesome.
Between us composting and then, you know, and we refuse to buy, you know, a lot of stuff that's wrapped in plastic or that comes in plastic that isn't able to be recycled. We just won't buy it. You know, we will choose glass over plastic any day of the week. And, you know, making those small changes, you can really have a big impact. And you can start, like, it's all about, I think, you know, starting to take a little bit of responsibility for your existence on Earth. Yeah. You know, and, like, doing your part to ensure that, you know, we leave this place better than the way that we found it. And to secure, you know, a thriving and a lush environment for not just, you know, our kids, but the generations and generations to come. You know, one of the environmentalists that really is a big influence is Jacques Cousteau. Okay. He's an oceanographer. He's actually the guy that they based the Steve Zissou character off of from Life Aquatic. Okay, all right. But you know, he has this great document, man, and it's called the Bill of Rights for Future Generations. And he talks about, you know, the steps that have to be created to ensure that we have an inheritable world.
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah. Yes, it's Jacques Cousteau Bill of Rights for Future Generations. And it's I think it's got 10 rights on there of, you know, people, I mean, and that's what we have to understand is like, the generations that haven't been born yet have the same right to life that we do. And unless we hold ourselves responsible now, they are going to inherit a world that's worse than what we're living in now. And I think that is, you know, that's really about, like, you know, if you want to get involved in, like, morality, you know, taking responsibility for your existence and for the existence of your children, you know, that's one of the most moral aspects that, you know, any human, regardless of what your belief is, can do. And, you know, I'm really inspired by Dr. King. And there's this one line that keeps me going a lot. From, you know, he's writing this letter and he's sitting in a jail in Birmingham, and he has this thought, you know, while he's in captivity, of how, you know, those who are blessed with the skills and the privilege and the ability to advocate for others have the moral responsibility to advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves. And so, and, you know, that's why we're doing the farming, man. Like, we really want to not only provide ourselves with this really nutritious and fresh food, but we want to be able to inspire others to take back, and I'm not going to call it independence, but everyone can do a better job of lessening their dependence, whether it comes to, you know, your energy or your food. You know, we can all do a better job to, you know, secure some type of production that moves us from being, you know, consumers to producers.
I mean, I love that. Like, you're not asking everyone to be completely food independent, but just become a little less food dependent.
Yeah,
that's
what it's about, man. Because
Yeah.
no one can do it all by yourself,
Right.
Like, and that was a really humbling thing, because you go after it hard, and you're like, man, I'm gonna do all this stuff, and then you're like, oh my God, I can't do all this stuff, and so you start to rely on that community that you built, and man, the community that we have of farmers, growers, hobbyists in the area, man, I saw that you had Lauren Jennings on, and man, her and Aaron were like my foot in the door. I went to a beekeeping class right after I got into permaculture, because I was just doing my own thing, and then I started meeting all of these like producers of food, man, and like going and checking out what people were doing, and like that's what got me fired up about growing and becoming a larger farm. Is by going out and like getting inspiration from others who are living their dream and achieving their passion.
for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so you mentioned chemical free. So how do you keep bugs off of your plants?
We plant more. Yeah. So like
They just defend themselves.
Yeah. Well, like people are like, the bugs are eating all of my Swiss chard. What do? I'm like, well, you should have planted more chard. Like so there's just some holistic things you can do, like spraying neem oil. But man, I'm lazy.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much that goes into it that, as far as like spray, we just will grow stuff that doesn't need to be sprayed. Or like by the time the bugs start to eat the leafy vegetables, it's already so hot to where those leafy vegetables are on their way out of the door.
Gotcha.
And so like you could extend their life for a couple more weeks, but it's just not worth it.
Okay.
But so like the the fruit that we produce, the blackberries, blueberries, figs, and we've also got some pears and a few elderberries, some pawpaws, stuff like that. But we none of that needs to be sprayed. But man, these big monoculture operations, like folks growing peaches, folks growing plums, all of that stuff is like actively sprayed. Strawberries, they're on the dirty strawberries, yeah, they're on the dirty dozen list. And so it's really about like choosing to grow things that aren't going to necessarily be bothered by a lot of insects, and if they are bothered, like I think that having a diverse array of insects in your stuff is a good thing.
I mean, that would probably add to your microbiome and all that kind of stuff as well, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. So, like, there's always things that you have to watch out for, like blight with fruit trees and things like that. I had some blight get on some of these potted citrus trees that we have.
Yeah, what you got here?
Yeah, so this is a kaffir lime, and this one over here in the corner is a blood orange.
Okay.
So, yeah, we got a few. We got a couple.
I'm not familiar at all with what
So
you just referenced.
So break that up in your hands and give it a whiff.
Okay.
I first heard about this plant at Parrish, man. Emmy and I went and had...
very citrusy.
Emmy, what was that dessert called? Panna cotta. Yeah, so we had a coconut panna cotta, and then the top was garnished with kaffir lime, and I was like, this is good.
Yeah.
And so, man, I went out and bought a tree, and... whenever this one is the most temperature sensitive one, so whenever it gets close to 32, we bring it inside. But whenever it drops below 28, they've all got to come inside. But yeah, then they're just our citrus trees and pots.
Nice.
I love having the trees inside, man. It's fun. And then on the inside we got some marigolds. There's a garlic sprout coming up in it.
Gotcha. Nice.
But yeah, man, I really enjoy, and it's got a great acidic flavor, but without any of that, it's a great citrus flavor without any of the acidity.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, a little bit. I guess we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh yeah, dude.
I've had a smile on my face the whole time, so I always love to learn, and I was I never know what I'm about to get into, especially with someone you never met, and I'm learning to hate text messages because you can't convey, feelings and that kind of deal.
Yeah.
I always tell the story about Desi. So I had talked to Desi before, introduced myself to Desi before, and obviously Desi's a talker, and we talked at the food truck one day. But I'm texting him back and forth, like trying to line up a day, and he's just like, okay, yeah, sure, sounds great, I'll be there. And I'm sitting there waiting on him. I'm like, all right, I don't know how this is gonna work out because I don't know if this guy's excited or not. And then we talked for almost 3 hours, so it was great. But I was excited to talk to you because of how excited you were whenever I just slid in at the bench there at Enoch's. It was like, hey man, I'd love to talk to you sometime.
This is my first podcast. Man,
yeah.
So that was a great honor, man, and I love that you've created a platform to where we can get local folks and get their ideas and their passions out there.
Definitely. Well, I love what you have going on here and what you're pursuing, and again the whole efficiency and stacking, and I love that, and I obviously wish you the absolute best, and hope that you can continue to grow this thing, and look forward to your Australia adventures and and what comes after that.
Yeah,
and,
we're gonna come back and change this place. Man,
yeah, for sure. Well, your Instagram name is right on point, right about change.
All right, man.
I love that. So, I guess if you want to plug anything, tell everybody where to find y'all on social media.
Yeah, so we're on Facebook and Instagram. It's Current Farms, CURRENT. And I didn't talk about the name, but, it's a play on us. We're pretty close to the Ouachita River, and we like to grow seasonal, what's currently available.
Gotcha.
And also it's a little play on Tuna's nickname. But yeah, man, we're really trying to work hard, put out good products that people enjoy, and also try to, allow people that, they can really start to make some investments to live a little bit of a better quality of life.
Yeah, definitely.
But thanks, Dan. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. And I really hope that, I can come back here in a year or so and we can talk about it again and see where you've grown.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, no doubt. Awesome. Well, we'll catch up with you down the road then.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, y'all.